The rain hammered against the windows like a relentless drumbeat, mirroring the storm raging inside Mark's chest as he stared at the empty crib in the dim light of his living room. It was 2 a.m., and his 2-year-old daughter, Lily, had finally cried herself to sleep after another night of fever and fussing, her tiny body exhausted from the ordeal. Mark, a single dad since his wife's sudden passing in a car accident 18 months ago, felt the weight of the world pressing down on him, bills piling up, a job that barely paid enough for daycare, and the gnawing loneliness that whispered doubts into his ear every silent hour. But nothing prepared him for the piercing scream that echoed from next door that fateful night, a sound so raw and primal it cut through the thunder, pulling him from his weary trance and into a moment that would shatter and rebuild his fractured life. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, hit that like button, drop a comment below, share this story with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel Kindness for more heartwarming tales that remind us of the good in the world. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Mark had moved into the quiet suburban neighborhood 6 months after losing Sarah, seeking a fresh start away from the memories that haunted their old apartment. The house was modest, with peeling paint and a yard overgrown with weeds, but it was affordable, and the neighbors kept to themselves, except for Emily and Tom, the couple next door. They were in their late 30s, like Mark, and their warm smiles during occasional driveway chats had been a small beacon in his dark days. Tom, a burly mechanic with a laugh that boomed like summer thunder, would wave while tinkering with his old truck, and Emily, with her gentle eyes and homemade cookies she'd sometimes leave on Mark's porch, seemed like the epitome of stability. Mark envied their easy companionship, the way they'd hold hands on evening walks, a reminder of what he'd lost. But life, as Mark knew too well, could unravel in an instant. It started with Tom's persistent cough, dismissed at first as a stubborn cold from the garage's chill. Then came the doctor's visits, the scans, the diagnosis. Lung cancer, aggressive and unforgiving. Mark watched from afar as Emily's vibrant garden wilted under neglect, as ambulances became a grim routine, and as Tom's frame grew frail, his booming laugh reduced to whispers carried on the wind. The neighborhood whispered sympathies, but Mark, buried in his own grief and the demands of single parenthood, offered little more than awkward nods and a casserole he'd burned in his attempt at kindness. He regretted it now, replaying those missed opportunities in his mind as he juggled Lily's needs and his warehouse shifts. Lily, with her mother's curly hair and infectious giggle, was his anchor and his ache. Every milestone she reached without Sarah felt like a victory laced with sorrow. Nights like this one, with the storm raging outside, amplified his isolation, diapers to change, bottles to warm, and the endless cycle of worry about providing for her future. He barely slept, his dreams haunted by Sarah's final smile, and mornings brought the grind of dropping Lily at the overpriced daycare before clocking in for 12-hour days lifting crates that left his back screaming. Financial strain gnawed at him. The life insurance had covered the funeral, but medical bills from Sarah's brief hospital stay lingered like ghosts, and now, with inflation biting into his paycheck, he skipped meals to ensure Lily had enough formula. Friends had drifted away, unable to bridge the gap of his widowhood, and family was distant, offering platitudes over phone calls but no real help. Mark pushed through, his calloused hands a testament to his resolve. But deep down, he feared breaking, wondered if he was failing his daughter the way he felt the world had failed him. Then came that scream, piercing the night like a siren's wail. Mark bolted upright, heart pounding, as flashes of lightning illuminated the shadows. It came from next door, Emily's house. He hesitated only a moment, grabbing his raincoat and rushing out into the downpour, his slippers sinking into the mud. The door was ajar, and inside, the scene unfolded like a nightmare. Tom slumped in his armchair, face ashen, eyes vacant, while Emily knelt beside him, her hands clutching his lifeless one, sobs racking her body. The paramedics arrived minutes later, but it was too late. The cancer had claimed him swiftly, a mercy in its cruelty. Mark stood there, drenched and helpless, as Emily collapsed into a neighbor's arms, her world crumbling. The funeral was a blur of gray skies and murmured condolences, Emily standing alone by the grave, her once bright eyes dulled by grief. Mark attended, Lily in his arms, offering a quiet "I'm sorry" that felt inadequate. In the days that followed, the neighborhood returned to its rhythm, but Emily's house grew silent, curtains drawn, lights dim. Mark glimpsed her occasionally, a shadow moving through her home, and guilt tugged at him. He knew that isolation all too well, the way grief swallowed you whole. The knock came the very next day after the funeral, soft but insistent, pulling Mark from the kitchen where he was pureeing carrots for Lily's lunch. He wiped his hands on his jeans, glancing at the clock. It was noon, and the sun pierced through the clouds for the first time in weeks. Opening the door, there stood Emily, her face pale and etched with exhaustion, holding a small wrapped bundle in her trembling hands. Her eyes, red-rimmed from tears, met his with a vulnerability that stopped him cold. She didn't speak at first, just extended the package. A homemade quilt, stitched with patterns of stars and moons, something she'd mentioned making for their future child that never came, as infertility had been another quiet battle in their marriage. But now, with Tom gone, she explained in a voice barely above a whisper how she'd finished it last night, unable to sleep, and thought of Lily, the little girl next door who brought light to the street with her laughter. Mark accepted it, stunned, feeling the soft fabric under his fingers, and in that moment something shifted, a crack in the walls they'd both built around their hearts. What followed wasn't a fairy tale romance, but a slow, tentative weaving of lives frayed by loss. Emily began stopping by more often, at first to drop off meals she'd cooked in her empty kitchen, meals that filled Mark's home with aromas he'd forgotten, roast chicken with herbs from her garden, apple pies that reminded him of Sarah's baking. In return, Mark invited her in, letting Lily's toddling steps and babbling words fill the silence that had become Emily's constant companion. He saw her struggles mirrored in his own, the paperwork avalanche after a spouse's death, the echoing emptiness of a bed too big for one, the questions from well-meaning friends that only deepened the wound. Emily shared stories of Tom over coffee, how he dreamed of traveling the world but settled for weekend drives, how his illness had stolen their plans but not their love. Mark opened up about Sarah, the vibrant artist whose paintings still hung on his walls, her accident a random twist of fate on a rainy road much like this one. Their conversations stretched into evenings, Lily playing at their feet, and gradually, the burdens lightened. Emily helped with bedtime routines, her gentle touch soothing Lily's tantrums in ways Mark's weary patience couldn't, while Mark mowed her lawn and fixed the leaky faucet Tom had always promised to repair. Challenges persisted, testing their fragile bond. Mark faced a layoff scare at work, the warehouse cutting hours amid economic downturns, forcing him to dip into savings he didn't have. Panic set in as he calculated daycare costs, wondering if he'd lose the house. But Emily stepped in unasked, offering to watch Lily during his shifts. She had her own demons, nights when grief ambushed her, leaving her curled on the floor, questioning why life had dealt such blows. One evening, Mark found her on her porch, staring blankly at Tom's old truck rusting in the driveway, and he sat beside her, sharing his own breakdowns, how he'd once punched a wall in frustration, scarring his knuckles as a reminder of his humanity. Together, they navigated the messiness, Emily's in-laws pressuring her to sell the house and move away, Mark's battles with Lily's emerging separation anxiety, echoes of her sensing her mother's absence. Suspense built in subtle ways, the will they or won't they of their growing closeness, moments where hands brushed and eyes lingered, but fear held them back, each scarred by loss and wary of new pain. Yet change bloomed like spring after a harsh winter. Emily revived her garden, planting seeds with Lily's chubby hands helping, dirt smudged on their faces as laughter returned. Mark took on side gigs, his energy renewed by the support, and they celebrated small victories, a promotion for him, her first solo trip to the store without tears. The neighborhood noticed, whispers turning from pity to admiration, but for Mark and Emily, it was deeper, a realization that kindness could mend what fate had broken. One crisp autumn day, as leaves swirled in the wind, Emily knocked again, this time with purpose. She confessed her fears of moving forward, but in Mark's eyes she saw a mirror of hope. They didn't rush. Instead, they built a family from the ashes, Dinners together, holidays shared, Lily calling Emily Emmy with a toothy grin. Mark felt Sarah's spirit approving in the quiet moments, and Emily honored Tom's memory by living fully again. In the end, as snow blanketed the neighborhood that first winter without Tom, Mark stood by the window, watching Emily and Lily build a snowman in the yard, their breaths visible in the cold air, hearts warming against the chill. What began with a scream of loss had transformed into echoes of joy, proving that sometimes a simple knock could open doors to healing, love, and second chances. The quilt draped over Lily's crib symbolized it all. Threads of sorrow woven into patterns of resilience, a testament to how neighbors could become lifelines, turning solitary struggles into shared strength. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the beauty in human connection, please like, comment with your thoughts, share it far and wide, and subscribe to Kindness for more stories that inspire. Your engagement means the world and helps spread these messages of hope.